You probably felt it before. That moment when life pushes back so hard that you wonder if you can keep going. Most men break under pressure, letting comfort and excuses define their limits. But Musashi proved that limits are illusions, walls built by the weak to avoid the pain of growth. His method wasn't designed to make you feel good. It was designed to make you unbreakable. What if I told you that becoming unstoppable has nothing to do with talent, luck, or waiting for motivation? It comes from principles so clear and so sharp that once you live by them, setbacks become fuel, obstacles turn into training, and failure itself becomes a stepping stone. This is what the samurai mastered, and it's what you're about to learn. For years, I've studied Musashi's teachings, and the truth is simple. Discipline creates power, and power creates freedom. This isn't theory. It's a way of living that men followed into battles where losing meant death. And yet, they stood calm, sharp, and ready. That same mindset is what will make you unstoppable in your own battles today. In this journey, we will break down the samurai method into precise steps that harden your mind, sharpen your discipline, and turn weakness into strength. By the end, you'll see that the only thing standing between you and an unstoppable life is the choice to walk this path. Musashi's path began with brutal honesty. He called it the way of seeing, and it demanded that he look at himself without excuses. Most men deceive themselves daily, calling distraction productivity, calling weakness balance, calling avoidance strategy. But Musashi believed that the man who lies to himself has already lost the battle. Self-assessment was his first weapon. To become unstoppable, you must tear down illusions. Stop saying you don't have time and admit you waste it. Stop pretending you're tired when you're simply untrained. The samurai treat excuses as enemies to be cut down before they took root. Laziness and mediocrity can only survive in shadows. The moment you shine light on them, they weaken. Musashi himself tested this in the harshest way. After one of his duels, despite winning, he spent 2 years in isolation studying his weaknesses instead of celebrating his victory. Imagine that, the greatest swordsman alive, undefeated, yet obsessing over flaws invisible to others. That's how seriously he took the art of self-assessment. Applied to modern life, this principle means tracking your actions with brutal clarity. Write down where your time truly goes. Measure your distractions instead of just complaining about them. When you expose the numbers, hours wasted on screens, promises left undone, workouts skipped, you hold up a mirror sharper than any blade. The man who embraces self-assessment gains unshakable power because he no longer hides from the truth. He doesn't need validation from others. And he doesn't collapse when reality hits. Like Musashi, he becomes relentless in improvement, never blind, never satisfied. And that honesty is the first step to becoming unstoppable. Rigidity breaks, flexibility endures. Musashi understood this truth long before modern psychology called it resilience. In his early duels, he never used the same weapon twice. Sometimes a sword, sometimes a spear, sometimes even a wooden stick. Why? Because he knew that life never attacks you the same way twice. The man who insists on only one plan is the man who falls. To be unstoppable, you must learn to flow like water. Obstacles are inevitable. Plans will fail. The schedule you build will collapse under pressure if it's too rigid. Musashi's brilliance was that he didn't fight against reality. He bent with it, reshaping himself so that nothing could pin him down. That's why no opponent could trap him. He refused to be predictable. Applied today, this means breaking free from perfectionist traps. Too many men quit because they set unrealistic rules. The perfect routine, the perfect day, the perfect outcome. When life shatters that fragile design, they stop altogether. Musashi's way is different. If you can't do 1 hour, do 10 minutes. If you can't win with strength, use strategy. If one door closes, smash through another. Adaptability is not weakness. It is strength. The weak cling to what they know, hoping the world won't change. The strong accept change as the battlefield itself. Musashi saw the environment not as something to fear, but as something to master by becoming fluid. Obstacles don't break the man who bends. They sharpen him. When you adopt this principle, laziness loses its excuse. I can't becomes I'll find a way. Challenges stop being reasons to quit and turn into invitations to adjust. The man who adapts like water cannot be stopped, because no matter what blocks his path, he simply flows around it and keeps moving forward. Every man faces pain, physical, emotional, or mental. Most run from it, chasing comfort as if it were safety. But Musashi saw pain differently. To him, pain wasn't punishment, it was fire. Fire that could forge the blade of discipline if endured with the right mindset. The lazy man lets pain break him. The warrior uses it to harden his spirit. This principle is simple but brutal. Don't waste suffering. Every discomfort you feel can either make you weaker or stronger. Musashi slept in caves, endured hunger, and exposed himself to the raw forces of nature not because he had no choice, but because he knew strength lives on the other side of hardship. By choosing difficulty, he trained his mind to stop fearing it. Modern life has made men soft because it sells them comfort as the highest goal. Air conditioning, fast food, endless entertainment, all designed to dull the edges of struggle. But a dull man cannot cut through life's battles. Musashi's wisdom forces you to confront the truth. Comfort is not your ally. Pain is. To apply this today, deliberately put yourself into small hardships. Train harder than feels comfortable. Take cold showers. Work when you don't feel like it, not to punish yourself, but to prove that your will is greater than your feelings. Each time you face discomfort willingly, you rewire your brain to see it as fuel instead of fear. Pain becomes unstoppable energy when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Use this." Musashi mastered this art, turning every trial into power. You can do the same. Every time life burns you, let it forge you instead of consuming you. That is how warriors turn suffering into strength. Musashi once wrote, 1,000 days of training to forge, 10,000 days of training to polish. Behind those words lies a brutal truth. Mastery is not a weekend challenge, nor a 30-day transformation. It is a lifetime. He knew that repetition, not inspiration, builds the mind of a warrior. Discipline is not born in moments of excitement, but in the grind of years. Most men want quick fixes. They search for motivation videos, shortcuts, and hacks, hoping for instant results. But Musashi laughed at the idea of shortcuts. He spent decades repeating the same strikes with his sword, over and over, until the movements weren't just practiced, they were him. Every cut was carved into his identity. That is why no opponent could catch him off guard. The 1,000-day rule teaches you that effort compounds. 3 years of consistent discipline transforms habits into identity. And once your actions become who you are, laziness loses its grip. Quitting stops being an option because your nature itself pushes you forward. That's the difference between trying and becoming. In modern life, this principle means choosing one discipline and committing to it daily without excuse. Whether it's your health, your craft, or your work, the key is repetition until it becomes second nature. Most men never last more than a few weeks. Musashi lasted decades, and that is why his name is still remembered centuries later. If you want to be unstoppable, stop asking how fast it will happen and start asking how long you're willing to walk the path. The man who trains for 1,000 days will beat the man who trains only when he feels like it. Musashi proved it, and now it is your turn to embody it. Musashi respected knowledge, teachers, and traditions, but he depended on none of them. He studied under monks, warriors, and masters, yet always moved on, taking what was useful and discarding the rest. His independence made him unshakable because no single mentor, book, or system controlled his strength. He honored wisdom, but his reliance was on himself. Dependency creates fragility. Many men attach themselves to gurus, routines, or external systems, believing they cannot function without them. But when the teacher leaves, when the system fails, when the conditions change, they collapse. Musashi avoided this trap by extracting value from everything without becoming a slave to anything. That's how he stayed sharp while others weakened. Applied to your own life, this means respecting coaches, methods, or tools, but never surrendering your judgment. Learn from mentors, but don't idolize them. Use productivity systems, but don't let them own you. True strength comes from integration, not dependency. The ability to walk alone with what you've learned and still keep moving forward. This principle frees you from fear. If you depend on nothing external can break you. Opinions, setbacks, or even the loss of resources can't crush a man who carries his power inside. Dependency breeds weakness, but self-reliance breeds unshakable discipline. That's why Musashi could live in caves, own nothing, and still dominate every battle. When you learn to respect without dependency, you become adaptable, flexible, and secure in your own foundation. You are no longer chained to people, systems, or circumstances. Your strength travels with you, unshaken. This independence is not isolation, it's freedom, and only free man can truly be unstoppable. In the final years of his life, Musashi left behind 4 words that define the philosophy: never stray from a way. Simple, yet ruthless in its demand. What he meant is that true strength is not built in bursts of inspiration, but in the refusal to abandon the path. Even when it feels impossible, the way is walked every day, not only when convenient. Many men fail because they mistake discipline for a sprint. They push hard for a week, a month, maybe a year, and then collapse when the fire of motivation burns out. Musashi endured for decades because he understood that consistency beats intensity. Staying on the path, even imperfectly, always triumphs over those who chase perfect effort and then quit. Life will test you. You will fall, you will slip, you will fail. Most men let those moments define them, giving up entirely. Musashi's lesson is different. When you fall, you don't restart, you return. No guilt, no drama, just a relentless act of walking the path again. That's how the unshakable mind is forged. To never stray from the way means committing to discipline as a permanent lifestyle, not a temporary challenge. It means your principles are not negotiable, even when no one is watching, even when no applause comes, even when the world tempts you to stop. This endurance builds a strength that external forces cannot touch. When you embody this principle, you stop chasing motivation and start living discipline. You understand that failure is not the end, but a step in the journey. And when quitting is no longer an option, you become unstoppable, because the way itself makes you unbreakable. Musashi often reminded his students that a warrior's strength is twofold: the way of the pen and the way of the sword. In other words, true mastery requires balance between mind and body. A man who trains only his muscles becomes predictable and shallow. A man who sharpens only his intellect grows fragile and hesitant. But when both are developed together, discipline becomes complete. The body is the vessel of endurance. It teaches you pain, stamina, and the ability to push past limits. But the mind is a strategist, the force that directs action, makes decisions, and controls emotion under pressure. Musashi himself spent as much time writing, painting, and practicing calligraphy as he did wielding his blade. To him, creativity and combat were not opposites but partners. Applied to modern life, this principle means you cannot neglect either side. Train your body with discipline, because strength and health fuel your capacity to act. Train your mind with study, reflection, and creativity, because wisdom fuels your ability to choose. The unstoppable man is forged not in one arena, but in both. The danger comes when you favor one and dismiss the other. Musashi saw countless warriors with strong bodies, but weak minds fall to their own arrogance. He also knew scholars who had sharp thoughts, but collapsed the moment they faced real hardship. Neither path alone builds resilience. Balance is what creates the edge. By committing to both, you move closer to becoming unshakable. Your body carries your will, and your mind directs your power. Together, they form a complete warrior, the man who can endure, adapt, and conquer. This unity of pen and sword is a foundation of unstoppable confidence and discipline. One of the most feared truths Musashi embraced was the inevitability of death. To the samurai, fearing it meant living in chains. By confronting mortality daily, they stripped fear of its power and acted with unmatched clarity. Musashi fought more than 60 duels, often against men who sought to kill him. Yet he walked into each battle with calm. His secret? Death was no longer his enemy. When you accept that loss, failure, or even the end itself is inevitable, you stop living cautiously. Most men waste their lives in hesitation, avoiding risks because they are afraid of the pain of defeat. Musashi knew that fear of death is a root of fear of life. By embracing mortality, he was able to act decisively, never paralyzed by what could go wrong. Applied beyond the battlefield. This principle means detaching from outcomes you cannot control, whether in business, relationships, or personal battles. The man who fears loss is already defeated, but the man who accepts is free to act boldly, to risk greatly, and to achieve what the timid never attempt. This is the samurai's unshakable freedom. Fear shrinks when faced directly. By meditating on mortality, Musashi turned it into fuel, reminding himself that every day was borrowed time. That urgency drove him to train harder, live sharper, and waste nothing. For him, death was not a shadow to hide from, but a reminder to live with relentless intensity. When you embrace the same relationship, nothing can intimidate you. Criticism loses its sting, failure loses its grip, and even hardship becomes small in the face of finality. Accepting death doesn't weaken life. It makes life unbreakable. And in that fearless stance lies the essence of being unstoppable. At first, discipline feels like effort. Every action is a choice, every step a battle against resistance. But Musashi's method reveals a deeper transformation. When practiced long enough, discipline ceases to be something you do. It becomes who you are. He didn't force himself daily to live like a warrior. Over time, the path itself became his identity. This is why he trained thousands of repetitions with his sword, why he endured endless hardships, why he practiced art with the same intensity as combat. Each act reinforces nature until it no longer required willpower. His discipline was not an external force, but an internal reality. He didn't decide to live this way, he became it. For modern men, this principle means consistency until habit merges with character. At first, waking up early, training, working with focus, or resisting distraction will feel unnatural. But repetition makes them normal, and persistence makes them part of you. Soon you stop thinking, I must be disciplined, and begin to live as a disciplined man without question. This shift is the death of laziness. When your habits are aligned with your identity, failure no longer feels like an option. It feels like betrayal of who you are. That inner accountability is stronger than any external system, because it flows from your very sense of self. Like Musashi, your discipline becomes inseparable from your existence. When discipline turns into identity, you don't rely on motivation, rewards, or outside pressure. Your strength is self-sustaining. You no longer fight to be consistent. You simply live consistently. And that is the moment when no obstacle can shake you, because your path and your being have become one. Musashi's greatest wisdom was not found in victory, but in his understanding that the path never ends. Even after 60 undefeated duels, even after decades of training, he still considered himself a student. At 50 years old, he declared, I have not yet reached the way. That humility and persistence reveal the final secret. The warrior's journey is eternal. For many men, success becomes the enemy. They achieve a goal, feel pride, and then soften. Discipline fades, hunger disappears, and arrogance takes root. Musashi avoided this trap by never allowing himself to believe he had arrived. Every duel, every drawing, every reflection was part of the same infinite training ground. To live this principle means refusing to retire from growth. You don't reach a point where discipline becomes unnecessary. You don't graduate from the path of self-mastery. Every day presents a battle, and the true warrior welcomes it with readiness, not resentment. The eternal path is not a curse. It is the proof that you are alive. This mindset frees you from the illusion of completion. You stop chasing the day when things will finally be easy, and instead embrace the truth. It never gets easier. You simply grow stronger. The man who understands this never stagnates, never weakens, never stops sharpening his blade. The eternal path is a foundation of being unstoppable, because if the journey never ends, neither does your growth. As long as you walk it, you will always be advancing, and no obstacle can hold you still. That is Musashi's final gift. A life where the way itself becomes your shield and your sword. You have seen how Musashi's philosophy transforms ordinary men into forces that cannot be broken. Independence of mind, adaptability, mastery through repetition, respect without dependency, balance of mind and body, acceptance of death, identity through discipline, and eternal path. These are not fragments of wisdom. They are one system, a way of life. The truth is simple. You do not need motivation when you live by the way. You no longer wait for the right moment, the right feeling, or the perfect conditions. Discipline becomes natural. Pain becomes fuel and obstacles become allies. This is what makes a man unstoppable. The refusal to abandon the path no matter what comes. And here is your reward for staying until the end. Musashi's hidden teaching, rarely spoken but always lived. The way is in training. There is no final destination, no secret beyond the practice itself. Every day you commit, every moment you endure, every step you take on this path is already victory. If you choose this life, you won't need to tell others you are strong. They will see it. They will feel it. Your presence will carry the quiet weight of a man who cannot be shaken. That is the samurai way, and now it is yours to walk.